Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Big East Rewind. I'm Chuck Everson, and I'm your host from Villanova, and my co-host, my partner, my buddy, my pal, the great Sonny Sparrow, ladies and gentlemen, from Syracuse University. How are you, Sonny? I feel like I haven't seen you in a long time. How
I
you doing?
know, I know. It's been a while. It's been a
Been a
while.
while.
We're good.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. A lot of stuff has happened. We had our little 40th anniversary this past weekend at Villanova for our championship team, which was great to hang with all the guys. We had a great time. The school did an outstanding job of taking care of us as they always do, and
Okay, how many
all the
guys?
guys came back. I
How
mean,
many
we
guys
just
came
didn't.
back?
Well, Velcher Dawson passed away, so
Okay.
he wasn't coming back. And Connolly Brown is living and working in Senegal, Africa.
Wow.
So he
So
had
he
he
gets a
had a long
pass.
ride. So those were the only two guys. Everybody else was there, you
See,
know.
that's incredible. That's
That's pretty
incredible.
good. Yeah.
Wow.
We had the coaching staff there. A lot of the coaches were there. All the managers were there, So it was great. And it was a lot of fun. Villanova did a great job and
Well, you
hats
guys
off
are
to them.
first class with your alumni. You really are. That's
And we had a lot of other alumni that weren't a part of the '85 team were there. There was a lot of guys that showed up, and this is always it was a tricky day because it was a Friday night. Normally we do it on a Saturday. We played Providence at the Wells Fargo Center down in Center City, Philadelphia, and
Oh, okay. Not at the Finn. All right.
so it was a Friday night. It was a Friday night game, which made it a little bit tricky for some people. So I mean, but overall, it was an outstanding weekend. We had 2 days of hanging out. We got to meet our new athletic director, who's was 2 days on the job, and the next thing you know, he's in there with us, yucking it up with the '85 guys, at our event. So a good time was had by all. So, son, we got a very special show today. This guy has been on already a few weeks ago, actually, and he called me up and he had this idea for the show. And we'll get into that in a second, but I really think it's a topic that a lot of people don't like to talk about. It's not, it's
Especially men.
yeah, and I give this guy a whole lot of credit for coming on and sharing this story with us. He volunteered. He came to us with it, and I think some people might learn some stuff, and hopefully we can help some people with this show this week, Sonny.
That's
I
that's
mean,
the whole idea, right? If
that's
you
the
have one
idea, man.
person, yeah, if you
Mental
make a
health is a
difference.
serious business, and
Hmm.
especially in sports. Sports is so mental from the time you get on the court and you're playing, all the workouts getting up to that point from when you're a kid and how you've been treated. And we're going to go through all of that with our very special guest, one of the top 50 all-time players, Sonny, from UConn. He was a 13-point scorer, and he was MVP of the school's first NIT championship, which, by the way, Sonny, was the championship that started it all. Okay, if it wasn't for that, they would have never got those six other rings that they got. That they got. Holy cow, they did such a great job there. So,
Exactly.
without any further ado, our guest today is the great Phil Gamble. How are you, Phil?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank y'all for having me again on the show. I'm looking forward to
Thanks.
talking about these
Thanks for
situations.
coming in, man. I mean, this is an important subject.
Right.
But before we touch on that, I have to touch on your attire today because Sunday is a big game. The Eagles versus the Commanders on for the NFC chip to see who goes to the Super Bowl to play the winner of the Chiefs and Sonny's beloved Buffalo Bills. So
Uh-huh.
it is gonna. I think it's gonna be a hell of a game, Phil. Give me your unbiased, if you can. Give me your unbiased view of what do you think is going to happen. 3 o'clock at the link.
Okay. Well, the way I look at it, it's exciting right now for the command. For the Washington D.C. area, the DMV area. It's exciting right now. We haven't had this in a long time, and
33 years, my man.
exactly have Jaden Daniels at the helm. The quarterback. It's just exciting, and we got some good. We got McLaurin. We got different players that are stepping up, and it's a different atmosphere. In the Washington D.C. area. With the head coach Dan Quinn and a new a new owner and so forth, and Magic is part of that ownership.
I was going to say, what do you think? Is the new ownership really, you think they're behind it, or do you think it's all Jaden Daniels?
Uh, I think it's a little bit of both because his mentality and the way he was raised, it seemed like, because I read up on him and the way he was raised and so forth, and I'm pretty sure his parents wouldn't want him in no environment that was not conducive to his beliefs and so forth. And
Yep.
it just seems like he had the team surrounding him and so forth. And uh, I just think it's a good thing. It's exciting. I'm excited, for them. And I've been, since I was 7 years old, when I can remember watching football, watching
Yeah.
my brother let me watch the game with him one day. And, from that day on, that's all I knew, just watching.
You know what's interesting about Daniels? He had, in order for the team to draft him, he made them purchase this the thing you put on your face, like what's it called when your virtual reality thing. Okay. So he has all the defenses for all the teams that they're playing in this virtuality machine, and he plays it at double the speed. So he does that all week long, like a video game. So he sees everything exactly how it would be on Sunday.
Yeah.
Except on Sunday, it's twice as slow as the video game. Yeah. So it makes sense because when you watch that kid play, and I watched him at LSU also, he's got such poise and such confidence as a young rookie quarterback. It's unbelievable. It really is. It's I'm amazed at how steady he is, and even under the most intense pressure, he's steady Eddie, man. He's listen, he's really, really good. He's by far and away the rookie of the year. It has to be. I mean, he's had an incredible season. But I will say this. It's the number one rushing team in the Eagles. They got this guy named Saquon Barkley. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he's pretty good against the 29th ranked defense against the run. So guess what the Eagles are going to try to do? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, right, Phil? I mean,
exactly. We're going to have to try to stop the run. I mean, this is we 1-1 this year. We split.
I know. I was at both the games too. We're big Eagles fans here, and we were at both the games, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's touch base on Monday, my friend. All right.
Exactly.
Just so everybody knows, I was not allowed to wear my Buffalo Bills gear. I just want you to know.
Oh, Sonny, listen, I'm not wearing Eagles.
I asked politely, got shot down.
Got denied. Because listen, Mahomes is going to cry until he gets the call. You know that, Sonny. Come on. You know that. So I know you're already frustrated before the game even starts. I'm just trying to calm your nerves, Sonny.
He plays the rules, and he pushes that envelope a little bit.
Yeah,
he does.
Yeah,
he does.
But, hey,
that's why he wins. That's why he's great.
Yeah.
You win it 2 years. You win it 2 years in a row. You kind of get a little pat on the back a little bit. You know what I mean?
So, there you go.
Yeah, he's the real deal. I mean, until someone dethrones him, he's the best quarterback that we're
Yeah.
And they did it with a lot of injuries this year. You can't say anything bad about those guys. But we're not here to talk about football, Sonny. This is the Big East Rewind, and we talk basketball on this show. So today, Phil came on, and as we said in the opening a little bit, we're going to talk about some mental health stuff, and Phil's got a story for all of us to digest and to talk about, about what happened to him, and not just Phil. I mean, this kind of thing happens to athletes all the time, and nobody talks about it really, Phil, right? I mean, you are expected from a young age, you're groomed to be a professional basketball player or baseball player or football player, and all of a sudden, there's no more cheering. You're there by yourself. What happens? How do you deal with that? How do you handle that? So I'm going to turn the microphone and the floor over to you, my friend, and take us through the story, because I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Well, in Washington, D.C., growing up in the housing projects in Washington, D.C., I'm the youngest out of 9. But I had a brother that was, a few years older than me, but I didn't get to see play, named Leroy Gamble. And I used to hear other, like my middle school coach used to tell me about him. My brothers and them used to tell me about him. But he never stood up and and the school factor was an issue for him. But he was he the one that showed me how to start playing basketball. I was 7 years old. I would go to the basketball court with him, watch football with him on TV and so forth. And so I just connected with it. I connected with basketball and football, but then I stepped away from football, but I still had the love for football, but I just wanted to play basketball. And just to get started, my elementary school down in the neighborhood where I grew up at, I was the most valuable player on that team. And then you go to my the middle school in the neighborhood where I grew up at. I was the MVP coming from elementary school, so I go there in the 7th grade, and I'm looking to play on the team because the coach there at the middle school, he would come and see our games and so forth. But they had a packed team, from the neighborhood where I grew up at, because we had some good ball players in the neighborhood where I grew up in Southwest DC. So then, he asked me, could I wait until my 8th grade year to play? And so
Yeah.
I would go over to the Boys and Girls Club, number 4 Boys and Girls Club, and I'll be over there. And the guy named Mr. Willie Borden, Mr. Willie Borden was the police officer over there that ran the Boys Club. And one day he asked me, he said, why are you not playing for Jefferson Junior High School? And I told him, I said, hey, he told me to wait till my 8th grade year because they had a packed team. So then he brings a guy over named Jake Shorter, and that changed my life right there. Jake Shorter was he lived in the neighborhood where we grew up at, but he lived in the high rise apartment buildings. But he coached, he knew my brother and so forth. So he came over and he said, hey, do you want to play ball? And I said, yeah. He said, well, let's go talk to your mother. She's got to get your transcript, and you're going to have to catch 2 buses to get up to the school and, get there on time and be there every day and, so forth with your education and all. And I was like, yeah, I want to do it. So went to my mom's house with Mr. Borden, with Jay Shorter. My brother Leroy was there, my mother, and my brother looked at me and said, Mom, well, he looked at my mother and he said, Mom, if he want to do it, let him do it. I think it's in him. He want to do it. So I ended up going up to Langley Junior High School, and we eventually won a championship there. And then from Langley Junior High School, I went to St. Anthony High School, which was a Catholic school, and that's where John Thompson, rest in peace, coached before I got there. One of his coaches, one of his players coached me, Dwight Datcher, and so formed from there. And so on all those levels, I was MVP in elementary school, middle school, high school, and then we get to college. I'm the MVP of the biggest championship that UConn has ever won at that time, the NIT. And so this and all the coaches I had in my path, they because I'm just going to be honest about it, my dad wasn't there. We all by the same dad and mom, but he wasn't there. He left when I was 2, and I didn't see him until I was 19. So but all my coaches that was in my life, it was a blessing because all of them stood firm on what they believed in, staying out of trouble, getting your education and so forth. From Mr. Sims, rest in peace, he coached me at elementary school. Then Jay Shorter and Donovan Duck coached me at in my middle school, and then in high school, Dwight Datcher, rest in peace, he coached me as well. And then get us to the college level with Don Perno and Howie Dickman, and of course the Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
And Calhoun. Now, so let me ask you something, okay? So you've been groomed to be a basketball player since you're a young kid. You've had a lot of success, MVP everywhere you go, right?
Yes.
So as part of that, as you're growing up, and as you're afforded certain liberties, let's say, with some of the things. I mean, we all had that kind of treatment. You get treated a little bit differently when you're the better kid on your team, right? Talk about that for a second, because I think that's important to the story, Phil, is, you're not only were you the best guy on your team at MVPs, but you get to maybe use the gym sometimes when other guys can't get in the gym. Maybe you get, talk about some of the little nuances that you were afforded at that time.
Exactly. And that started early. Because I could walk right around the corner to my elementary school. And Mr. Sims he didn't live in the neighborhood, but he was like, he was a mentor for the neighborhood. He would come and get you if you didn't go to school. He would come and knock on your door and say, hey, where's such and such? And mom would say he's in the bed or whatever. And next thing you know, you're over there at the school. But he would come over there at like 8 o'clock at night. he would say, hey, if you want to use the gym, I'm over here at the gym. I got to do some paperwork. So I would go over there for like an hour and a half. My sister would walk me over there, my sister Gail, because she played basketball in the day. And she would walk me over there. And then she was like, I'll come back and get you about an hour and a half. And so I was able to use the gym, at that time. And then, sometimes it was a little, you got a pair. My mother wasn't able to afford all the Nike sneakers and so forth of that nature at that time. But, somehow, some way I would get a pair of sneakers,
Yep.
because I was dedicated to the game. I wanted to learn. I wanted to win. I wanted to, just be good. And then I remember having the posters on my wall: Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Dr. J, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jack Sikma. I remember those guys. The Iceman. Those are the pictures I had on my wall and so forth. But just getting a pat on the back and they cheering you on and so forth. And then you got the coaches that's really, because you're a coachable player, they really want to pour into you. And I was acceptable to that. I didn't, try to fight it or anything. I wanted to learn the basics of the game and so forth. And so I was always, the coaches know who they see that want to learn the game and who's out there to
Sure.
dedicate themselves to the game.
What about in the classroom, Phil? Especially when you get to college. I mean, we've all had, teachers that, you get first crack at the better teachers. I know at Villanova we had an opportunity to sign up for classes before anybody else did, so we made sure that our guys got the teachers that we wanted to have. Maybe they were friends of the program. I'm not saying anybody was given anything as far as grades go, but
Yeah.
you got teachers that understand that you're going to be on the road sometimes when you're playing. You obviously were afforded those types of luxuries too, right?
Exactly. Yes. Just to throw it back a little bit. In high school, I had no problems with my academics in high school, middle school, because I did my work. My mother, she was a stigma at that because, you know, in the household at the time, I had some brothers and so forth had to go back and get their GEDs and everything, and some
Right.
did graduate high school, but I was one of the ones that, I kept my grades up and so forth. But when I got to college, my freshman year, being around all the hoopla and so forth. And, I'm starting as a freshman. You didn't have a tutor there or so forth, somebody to kind of help guide you. But then my sophomore year, that came into play when Jim Calhoun took over as coach. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, I um, I was known to do my schoolwork, but when you get
And
around,
you were the youngest of nine, right, Phil?
I'm the youngest of nine. Yes, exactly.
So were you one of the first ones in your family to go to college?
Yes, I was the first to go to college, and then after the first to be in college, I had a niece to go to college, and then I had another niece to go to college. So
Okay.
they kind of followed after me. I was
So did that put a lot of pressure on you as the youngest, and now you're getting to go to school for free to college, right? For on a basketball scholarship. So what was that? Did that put any kind of stress pressure on you that you were the only one?
to be honest with you, I didn't think of it like that at the time. I didn't think of it at the time because I knew that's what I wanted to do. But I'll never forget my mom saying one time, because it was some struggles to get some of my siblings up to go to school, and to hear her crying one day, and I walked in the bedroom and I told her, I said, "Hey, mom," I said, "I'm sorry you're going through this," and she repeats this to me from time to time, and she said, I remember you telling me that, Mom, you're gonna that I told my mother that I'm gonna run to the end to graduate if I have to. I was young at the time, so that's the words that came out of my mouth at that time. But I told her I was gonna run to the end to graduate and get my degree and so forth because she used to cry when she was to try to get some of my siblings up, to go to school. But eventually, I'm proud of my siblings because they eventually did it. So
So
Yeah.
can let me rephrase or let me react that question that Chuck asked because I think it's relevant. Being, that you did well in school earlier, but now you're in college, no ever never ever felt that pressure like I've got these other 8 people that
Had a
I'm not
counting on
doing
me,
for
right?
right? Yeah. You
And
know,
I guess the pressure probably was there, but I didn't look at it like that because I was the first, and then in a way I kind of had in my heart a little bit that I know I wanted to finish school. I know I wanted to play basketball, and I knew I couldn't play basketball without keeping my grades up. And my focus was I wanted to make my mom happy.
right.
She stuck
Well,
by.
Right.
that's more pressure, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess you could say, well, it was pressure, but I didn't look at it like that because I just wanted to, I just, because she did so much for us to keep us all together. No Department of Social Service coming in trying to take her, any of the kids or
Right.
anything like that. She worked 2 to 3 jobs and so forth. So that was it was pressure, but it was I wanted to make her happy. I wanted to make her happy, and be honest with you, I wanted to make my other siblings happy as well because a few of my nieces and so forth followed behind me.
Yeah, I mean,
So
my wife is at college. Her parents are immigrants, and she's like, I have to do well in school. My mother sews coats. My dad's, works at as a carpenter. Like, I can't fail. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she talks about it, and it's pretty
it's
interesting how
tough.
each person deals with that, right?
Yes, yes, it was it was tough, especially at the time when I was academically ineligible myself. Going into my sophomore year, we missed 15 games, myself and Cliff Robinson, and that was tough on the family. My family is the type of family that my siblings didn't talk about it too much. They didn't
Yeah.
say much about it. Um, but my mom, she made her point, and when she made her point, it stuck. And she was like, she asked me one day, she said, "You love basketball, right?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "You love to play basketball, right?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, you got to get your grades up to play basketball." And she said, "You remember what you told me that you would finish school no matter what?" And I said, "Yes." And so that was the conversation. But
Right.
it was said in a way with a tough tone, but a loving tone. And so I pursued it, and I continued. I pushed through it. I got my grades up. I knew the library like the back of my hand, um, and I got my grades up, and so forth. We went on to win that championship in '88.
So you end your career at UConn, and now you go and you wind up with the 76ers, correct?
Yeah, I tried out with the 76ers.
And
You know,
and that didn't, you got released from there like a lot of us do. I
yeah,
mean, listen, 98% of the people don't get to do that. You know what I mean? It's only 2% that get to do that. And of those 2%, very few stick. Everybody thinks mom and dads now think, okay, my kid's going to the league, my kid's going D1, my kid's going to do this and that. You did that. I mean, you got to the mountaintop, so to speak, right?
yeah, yeah,
Then you played overseas, and now you find yourself in Portland with
yeah,
Cliff.
yeah,
Again, you're back with Cliff and Clyde the Glide and Kersey and all those cats. You're working out with all those guys. So
yeah.
and then what happens from there to go get into the meat and potatoes of this thing?
Okay, and yeah, to get from MVP all the way up to that level, and then you try out, and then I go overseas. And when I traveled to 76ers, you didn't make it. Then you go overseas, and then things start going up and down from there. And then reached out to Cliff. I said, "Hey, I'm coming back in town. I'm back in Connecticut." And he says, "Hey, let's." He said, "You want to come out here?" So I went out there to Portland. Stayed out there for about 3 months, working out with them, practicing with them. It was no official practice or anything, but it was Rick Adelman was there as well. PJ Calissimo was there as well.
Sure.
So I was there to work out to see what I can do, and hopefully somebody see me. But on behalf of my friend, I was out there and had a good workout. Next thing you know, I go back to Connecticut and I started coaching high school basketball for 3 years, and then I get called back over to go overseas. So that was a tough time to get released. That somebody didn't pick you up because you be an MVP on every level, and then you get to that point, and my goal in my mind was always to take care of my family. Growing up in the housing projects and being the youngest out of 9 and so forth. My goal, even though it probably wasn't their goal for me to take care of that family, but it was my goal. I wanted to take care of my mom. I wanted to look out and to make it I didn't make it like I wanted to in playing in the NBA and so forth. And I had friends in the neighborhood that that I would call certain friends like Melvin Hamilton, Dino Roach, Rodney Douglas. Rodney Douglas. Who else was it? Rodney Williams. And then my other friends in the neighborhood, certain friends that I would run into, Wally Perry and so forth. These guys, they would tell me I made it, but inside my heart and stuff, I didn't make it the way I wanted to. But they was telling me I made it already. They said
Right.
you just have to use your
Including Cliff. Cliff was telling you that too during the workouts, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're thinking, I didn't work out the way I wanted it to work out, which I could say the same thing. Sonny could say the same thing. I mean, Sonny not only played basketball, but he got drafted twice by the Milwaukee Brewers in baseball.
Oh wow, that's
And
awesome. Yeah.
so we were all at that point.
Yeah.
At some point, what happened once you said, okay, you look around and it's just you now?
Yeah.
Tell
Exactly.
us what happened at that point, Phil.
Yeah. I come back from overseas. I'm coaching. I'm coaching Hall High School in West Hartford, Connecticut. Um, I'm back in the area, and I had made a name for myself in Connecticut.
Of course.
So I'm working, and that's one thing about this. I stayed working because I knew I was on my own. Because when I left in '85 from DC, my mother and my middle school coach took me up to the bus station, Greyhound bus station, put me on the bus, and they said, my mother, she hugged me and she said, go up there and do what you have to do. And she said, you're on your own, as far as that part right there. But I always got a care package from my mother. She always sent me a care package and so forth of that nature. But it was the point that after I went back to Connecticut, and then I would run into people. I would go, I had certain players that wanted to hang out with me, like Lama DePriest, John Gwen. They would call me up, Phil, where you at? Why you didn't come to the game? But they knew because I went further than what they did. I had a different upbringing, and and had more success in basketball than they did. And so, and me and Cliff had a conversation before we left Connecticut, and the pact was we both make it, and to see him make it, it ate me up. It really did. It ate me up to a point where, I thought about all, MVP on every level, and then I'm like, why? Why not me? Why? What happened? What did I didn't do? What could I did? But what could I've done better? On
Right.
the court and so forth. And then then I went to Takeo Post Division II school, and that was a little different. Because Division II school, you're driving everywhere you go in vans, and I was trying to work my way up, and then I got to a point where I was burying myself out, and I just said, I'm done with basketball as far as coaching or whatever. So I went and I started teaching elementary school, and then I stayed working. Nobody never had to worry about me not working because I knew I was up there in Connecticut on my own, had no family up there.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day I just went home, and I was sitting in my living room where I was living in Waterbury, Connecticut, and I wrote Jim Calhoun a letter, and I said, Coach, I said, basically it was a long letter, but it was basically saying to him, what do you do when all the clapping and cheering stop? What do you do? What do you do when?
So this was to Coach Calhoun you wrote this letter to, right?
Yeah, this was to Coach Calhoun.
Okay.
Because
okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, so he had, of course, taken over for Don Perno, which Don Perno was a good person to me as well, and Howie Dickerman, but Howie Dickerman was still there as the head assistant with Jim Calhoun. He kept him on, but I wrote that letter, and it was like I sent the letter today. It's like he got it like the next day, but of course it took a few days for him to get. But I got a call out of the blue, and he was like, Phil, are you okay? Those were the first words that I heard from him. He said, Phil, are you okay? It was I needed to hear that call. It was tough times for me. I was working, I was isolating myself, staying away from people.
So let me ask you, Phil, while you're getting into this. So you are teaching elementary school, and
Yeah,
one day you just look up and you go, what? I'm not supposed to be here," kind of a thing, right?
exactly. Yeah,
And okay, so that's gotta be like a ton of bricks. That's a punch to the gut at that point
yeah,
because your goals and objectives and everything you dreamed about as a kid was to play on that hardwood in the NBA, not be teaching math or whatever you were teaching to youngsters.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
that there's anything wrong with that, but that's the dream, that's the goal, okay, and that's where you were
yeah.
at that point, like when you were starting to put together your master plan as a kid, how would you define yourself as a person, as a basketball player or as an athlete? What would, if you were going to take percentages and make up, okay, I'm 10% student, I'm 15%, son and brother, and I'm, whatever the percentage it would be of that. How would you define yourself at that point?
Well, at that point, I was. I'll be honest with you. It was like 70% thinking about my mother.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. It was 70% thinking about my mother. What would she think? What would she say? Uh, and it was another 5%. I'm thinking about the neighborhood when I went back to the neighborhood, uh, where I grew up at, because I was like a star that they pushed me. They didn't see me as,
Right.
I didn't hang around the guys who was into negativity. And if somebody saw me around negativity, they would go and tell my sister Gail or tell one of my brothers or so forth. And then one of my siblings would step up to me and say, hey, you don't need to be over there, get out of there, whatever, so forth, that nature. But I, you know, and so I didn't want to. It's like I didn't want to let myself down first and foremost, but my mother that played a big part, as well as my friends in the neighborhood. They played a big part.
Right.
And so I didn't want to let myself down. I was one of them people that I said to myself, I don't want people to look at me and say, "Oh, look at Phil Gamble, man, he gone down. He ain't doing nothing for himself," And I just didn't want to be that person. So I always kept a job. I always stayed
Right.
working. Um, but it was the biggest
Did
part.
you did you not tell your mom and your family that you were out of basketball at that point?
Uh, they didn't ask, but they knew. They knew, and because I went home for a few weekends, and when I went home for a few weekends, I would stay right there in the housing project where my mother was staying, right there back in the hood, and even though I had earned a little bit of change, money playing ball and so forth,
Sure.
but I still stayed there because I didn't feel like I needed to stay in a hotel or somewhere else. I feel like that's my home. That's where and when I stayed there, it was amazing how people would come around. Certain of the older guys that kind of mentored me through my younger days and stuff like that would come around and say, "Hey, Mons," because my nickname in the neighborhood was Too Tall because I played football, so they called me Too Tall, and they was like Too Tall home, and they would come around. Melvin Hamilton, Dave Brewer, them guys, Wally Perry, Dino Roach, them guys, they would come around and just reach out to me and so forth, and I would have good conversations with them and tell them, man, I wish I would. They would kind of stop me in my tracks. Nah, nah, nah. You made it, man. You got your degree. You working. You made a lot of contacts with people. Just go back to Connecticut and make contact.
So how did that make you feel, Phil? I mean, you got certain guys there telling you made it. You're feeling a certain kind of way, like you didn't make it. So there's that yin and yang pulling at you both ways. Did you then get a hold of Coach Calhoun again and have a conversation?
Uh, yeah. After that letter, that letter was huge for me. Just to go back, that letter was huge because I he told me he had a long conversation with me. He said he had coached some players that was pretty good, but he said it was some players that's never been on my level like I accomplished on every level, being MVP on every level. And so he said, when you're like that and you get all those clapping and cheerings and you MVP on every level, he said, you build inside your confidence that you're supposed to make it. That's your goal. You're supposed to make it. You're supposed to be in the NBA. You're supposed to be playing. So, and just by him talking to me, and he told me, he said he had some players that didn't get out of their rut until they was like in their 50s. And I was like, wow. And I told him, I said, I don't want to be, I don't want to be that way. I said, I don't want to be in the 50s just getting out of it. But he said, believe me, he said, that's true. He has some players that the time they got in their 50s, then they started hitting a spurt where they just left all that mental that was running them down and killing them, and so forth of that nature. He said, he got phone calls and he was so happy to hear that they was doing better for themselves.
Yeah.
And he told me, he mentioned that to me. He said, but you're one of the players that I've coached that has so much success that I knew it was going to take you a while to get out of it. And it did. It took me a while to get out of it, even though I kept working. I never stopped working. And I think that was the biggest key to me getting out of my rut, because I kept working and being around people. And being in Connecticut, it was kind of tough, because when I would go to the grocery store, somebody remember me.
Somebody will always say hello to you, right?
Yeah,
I know. I get that.
Yeah, and bring up what I used to do, and what happened, why didn't you? And so I got to go over that whole spiel, because I wasn't the type of person that wanted to be disrespectful to people.
So that stuff beats you down, Phil. I mean, if you're feeling a certain kind of way, right?
Yeah.
And you're getting all these how? Because I know guys that have held on to bad feelings like that for 40 plus years, man. And
Yeah.
it can wear you down. And I tell you, the guys that hold on to that, I mean, you are a success story, because you got rid of that somehow and shed that from yourself, and are able to go out and be successful. You're a husband now, and you got a family, and you got all these different things that how did you, two-part question, how did you get rid of all that baggage, number one? And how did you redefine success in your own mind?
Okay. First and foremost, I'll be honest with you. I got rebaptized. I'm a Baptist, and I got rebaptized in Connecticut, and I started going to church.
Okay.
And I started going to church, and that even on top of me working. And I started going to church, and and people just see me in church, and they would stop and say something to me and so forth. But my God Almighty brought me out of this. He brought me out of this because I went through, quite a bit from also during this period of time. It was the cancer thing that I had, melanoma skin cancer, where that kind of put a little depression on me and so forth with all this.
So you had more than just the basketball stuff eating at you, man. I mean,
yeah,
it got deep for you, man. Right? I mean,
yeah,
now you're ill, you got cancer. I mean, when somebody says that to you, everybody goes into panic mode, right? That's the last word
C
you
word.
hear, right, Sonny?
The C word. Once the
Yeah,
C word
man.
comes up, they
exactly.
almost
He knows. Sonny knows.
yeah, they almost like like you have a leper, like leprosy.
Yeah.
Exactly, because they
Well, I might catch it if I'm near you. I mean, there's just so many weird vibes that you get when you express that.
exactly, because I had that, because I was I'm still friends with a friend of mine, Ray Lewis, not the football player, y'all,
Uh,
but Ray Lewis, and his kids, he went to UConn, and he worked for Deloitte and Touche. I don't know if y'all heard of Deloitte and Touche
yeah, sure.
accounting firm. So
Yeah, accounting firm, yeah.
he went there, and his son, Ray Jr. And I used to go from DC or Connecticut to go visit them in New Jersey, because that's where they lived. And Ray Jr. asked his father, said, "Hey, would I get cancer with him coming here?" Because at that time I had my head wrapped up, because they cut me from the right side of my temple all the way to the middle of my forehead.
Wow.
Had 96 stitches. They'd go ahead and clean it out, and it was starting to spread. I'll never forget it, because it was 2001, and it was 5 days before Christmas. So it was kind of tough time on me. But for some reason, man, I just kept pushing. I kept pushing. I kept believing. I kept praying. And all that came into play. So that was one way that I kind of, I fought through that. And then I don't know if y'all heard, but I had a house fire that burned up everything I had. and it, so I was living in a connected house, and one house caught on fire, which burned down my stuff and so forth. So I went through that, losing everything, and then so with a lot of stuff going on, a lot of mental stuff, a lot of depression, but just like I said, for some reason I kept working. I didn't want to let myself down, didn't want to let my mother down. I know people in the neighborhood, I didn't want to hear that the people saying, Phil Gamble, look at him, man, he's not doing nothing with his life or so forth. That kept fighting me. But the second thing you asked me is about how did I picture my life? And I had pictured my life as getting married, having a family, having a house, those were the things, and going back to games and seeing Coach Calhoun, seeing Don Perno, seeing some of my former players, because my former teammates and so forth, because they knew what I was going through. Lima the Priest knew what I was going through. John Gwynn, Murray Williams, Cliff Robinson, rest in peace, Jeff King, Spider Ursery, them guys, they knew what I was going through. They knew it. But
so let me ask you, if you think about it right now, right?
Yes.
House fire, you've lost all your personal belonging. Cancer, you're starting to lose your health, right? So you're starting to lose so many things that you just take for granted, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And most people, they're really going to hit the skids depression wise.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you look around, you're like, I've lost some basic parts of myself,
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Listen, that's the definition of success, Phil. I mean, listen, you couldn't get hit with more things than you got hit with, and you keep on going, and you keep on punching, you keep on fighting,
I got to ask you though, some of that has to come from the lessons that you learn on the hardwood, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely, I
Get
think
back
so,
up.
right?
Exactly. I mean, I got to give it to, just like I said, I go back to all my coaches: Jay Shorter, Mr. Sims, Donovan Ricks, Dwight Datcher, Aaron Long, and Coach Calhoun, and those coaches that was in my life played a big part of my life, especially Mr. Willie Boyd from the Boys and Girls Club. Them guys played a big part of my life, So they instilled in me that they wanted nothing but the best from you, but you had to you had to put that work in.
Did you
But
feel like
they also instilled the toughness in you, Phil. I mean, you can't be soft and go through what you went through, pal. I mean, that you wouldn't make it. I mean, come on, let's be real here, man. I mean, they instilled the toughness, and that comes from playing sports, especially in the Big East. What that was like, I mean, it's either go hard or go home, right? At that point.
Phil, did you hit rock bottom? Would you call it? Would you say you hit the bottom?
I say I hit the bottom. I talk about this now. I met my soulmate. She was my high school sweetheart. We split and reconnected 33 years later, and
How about that?
got
That's
married.
awesome.
So she was, and by her being in my life at this time in my life, I opened up and I told her everything, and telling her about, I went home to D.C. But I lived in Virginia. I didn't go back to the D.C. area, but I would go back to see my family, my mom, and stuff like that. But I stayed away because I didn't want to see people, so I stayed in Virginia. And it was that time when I went back there, I had to stay in the shelter. Until I got the job. I found a job that I wanted. I found a job, saved my money, got out the shelter. That was, and then people say, "What happened to the money that you made?" But back then, you didn't make a lot of money.
No, we know that. I mean, you weren't making a lot of money.
You
didn't make a lot of money, and people didn't talk about this.
Exactly, man.
Right.
So they didn't make a lot of money, but I lived in the shelter for I think I stayed there for 6 months. I was planning on staying there for 3 months, and then one of the workers there, I can't remember his name, but he came up to me and he said, because he knew about my story because he was an athlete, but he didn't play college ball. But I kind of talked to him, I opened up to him and was talking to him, and he said, "Wow." And he came back to me one day and said, "Wow." He said, "This is really you." I said, "Yeah, this is me." And he said, "Don't stay 3 months, stay 6 months." He said, "Get enough money saved up so when you leave, you have something. You have something myself started on.
Good
And,
advice.
and so he was right. And so that, and as well as Ray Lewis, the guy I tell you about, not the football player, but he reached out to me when I was in the shelter, and he gave me a boost, and so so I took it from there, and then when I got my job, I was going to see my mom. I would get off work, go see my mother in D.C. and talk with her, and then she told me one day, she said, "You don't need to be here in D.C. You need to go back to Connecticut." And I said, "Well, Mom, I got to get a job to go back there." And I said, "Why you say that?" She said, "You don't seem happy here." And I said, "Well, I'm seeing you. I'm happy." And then she said, so I reached out to Jim Calhoun after that conversation with my mother. And so I said, "Coach, I'm trying to get a job to come back to Connecticut." I said, "It's time for me to come back. I need to be back in Connecticut." And so that's what happened. He reached out to congressman there in for Connecticut. And then I went to interview at the Capitol, at the Congress building, and then he said, "Well, we got a position for you, but it's not here in D.C." And he just didn't know that's what I was looking to do, go back to.
Yeah, right.
And so I went back to Connecticut as a case manager. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, man. That's unbelievable. I mean, people go through stuff. It's so funny, Phil, because I talk to guys all the time, especially since we've been doing the podcast,
Yeah.
guys from different teams. I'm hanging out with guys from all over the Big East.
Yeah, his network is much bigger than the Navy and White of Villanova now.
Yeah. I mean, that's only a small part now. I mean, I'm with your buddy Chris Smith at the Eagles Commanders game a couple weeks ago. So, but these guys complain. Some of them complain about how hard they had it afterwards, and they didn't know what to do with themselves. And there's some of the story that you told, the beginning of the story, right?
Yes.
But then, now I can say to them, you have no idea. You have no business being upset after you tell that story and you go from not playing anymore and being a teacher, and you're looking around going, what the heck am I doing here? Next thing you know, you have cancer, your house burns down, you're living in a shelter, you do all the stuff. It's amazing. So if you ever have a negative thought about being successful, just tell yourself your own story. I said, because that is incredible that you went through that and came out the other side and have a family and have all the things that you defined as being successful after basketball, right?
Exactly. I at this stage in my life right now, my wife Quanda, her name is Quanda Gamble, and matter of fact, just to let y'all know, she'll be retiring in a year or so, and we have a cake business called In the Mix Cakes, and
you know what? We eat cake, Sonny and I. So right, Sonny?
I eat a lot of cakes.
Sonny's a big cake man. I'm telling you right now. So
So
I'm just saying, Phil. If something happened to fly out to Binghamton, New York, we wouldn't be upset, right, Sonny?
It would be welcomed with open arms. Yes.
Exactly, and
that's right.
Pretty good cakes. I just give you a little short story. We went up to a game in January a couple of years ago to see St. John's and UConn play, and I think we brought up there 16 cakes. People ordered 16 cakes from her, man. So it's going well, and she's doing great with it. She's still learning as she go, but it's amazing how the clientele has grown and so forth. And but yeah, just like I said, I would never. This story that I have, everybody has a story, man. Everybody has a story.
Yeah.
Everybody go through it. And when I went back to DC, just to throw this out, I went to a sports psychologist up there in the Georgetown area.
I was just going to ask you that. Go ahead.
I went to a sports psychologist there, and he was basically hitting me with everything that he could hit me with to see that, and he would bring tears to my eyes, to say, hey, what if you wasn't an athlete? What would you be doing? What was your B plan? He would ask me all that type of stuff. And he told me, he said, well, you're older now. You can't run up and down the court no more. It was a lot of things that he was saying to me, but it was starting to make sense after a while, but he said, it's not up to him. He said, I can bring these things to the forefront and put them back in the front in your face, so you can, in your mind, so you can hear what you're saying. And he said, but then it's all up to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's really up to you to.
At the end of the day, it's all up to you is right. That's
Yeah,
exactly right. You know,
yeah, and
like
that's
I have a question for you though. I mean, you look at everything that happened, right? You
yeah,
still stopped playing the love of your life, basketball. My life, Sonny's life, we all love playing basketball. None
yeah,
of us can play anymore, okay?
yeah.
How did you fill the void of the competition and wanting to compete with other people? Do you do things in that regard, or you just let it all go after what you went through? You know?
Well, I the main thing was, it was just to let it go. But then I love watching college basketball. I love watching football. Those are things. But then my job that I do now as a juvenile probation officer, uh, I've given all myself to, to that at this time, and also assisting my wife with the cake business. I'm not a baker, y'all. So I just go get ingredients and pack it up and deliver.
All right.
But yeah, yeah, it, it, I just had to let it go, let it be, and just try to move on. And but just giving it all back to the. I got pictures up in my office where I work now, and the kids come in there and they say, I got some teenagers. I got some pretty rough teenagers with some gun charges, and I have a few with some murder charges, and I still go visit a couple of them while they're in detention now, and they look at me and they say, "Wow, that's you, Mr. Gamble? That's you?" I said, "Yeah, that's me. That's me right there." And I tell them where I'm from, tell them where I came from, how I grew up and so forth, and tell them, I said, you don't have to play sports. I said you can do something totally different. I said you just got to find that love, and you got to grasp onto it and stay focused with it. And so I always, with my degree, family studies, I always in social work. So I always stayed working with families and kids. And so when I started working with the juveniles, trying to keep them out of jail and so forth, but you get some that don't want to listen, and
Yeah.
then I got to put on the other hat, So and so I have to put on the other hat with them. But it's the main thing is that I've been pouring all my love into that, because sometimes I come home and I tell my wife, I give her a few stories, and she was like, "Okay, we're at home now."
Right, right, right.
So, but that's where all my love been going, man. Right there, just trying to give back and trying to help the juveniles that I can help.
Wow. I mean, that's an incredible story, Phil. I'm so thankful.
That's
And
therapy
Sonny
right
is,
there, man.
yeah, that's
That's
therapy
therapy.
right there. I mean, we're so thankful that you came on and shared that with us, man. We appreciate that. We appreciate that we gave you the platform to do that, and that you'd be able to share it with us. And I'm sure that will help a lot of folks that are struggling like that with all the mental stuff that you had to go through to get through all of those different obstacles, and you come out the other side. Amazing, man. If I
Yeah.
had a hat on, I would take it off to you, man. It
Hey,
was
man. Hey, I
fantastic. You know?
appreciate you and Sonny having me on. James and Jack as well, because they helping out, right?
Yep,
James and
they
Jack.
are. Yep,
So I
that's right.
appreciate y'all having me on, man, and just expressing this, because this was a long time coming, man. I thought about just getting on some podcast and just letting it out and so forth. But this is therapy for me as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But
Well, you think about it, right? Basketball athletics is a very strong testosterone macho, right?
yeah,
And then to go here was almost frowned upon. Like there's almost certain coaches, right? Rub some dirt on the other. It was just the common things that we were groomed with.
Yeah, like your soft type of attitude.
Yeah, suck
Honey,
it
I mean,
up, buttercup,
it's anything but soft what you went through. I mean,
Yeah.
no
But
one can ever
it's
use that word and your name in the same sentence, Phil. And
yeah. Well, I have to say this. Hey, man, where I grew up at in Southwest DC, man, there's nothing soft about it.
nope.
Nothing soft
That's
about
true.
it. And then on top of that, to play in the Big East, I mean,
Yeah.
you have guys wanting to fight you on the court, man.
That's a different kind of toughness, man. A different kind of toughness.
yep,
Exactly. And then life
it's
experience,
real.
all that put on top of each other, man, that bring toughness out of you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so hang out with us. We're going to wrap this up, Phil. And we really, truly appreciate you coming on and sharing
Thanks,
that
man.
with us. That took some guts, and I
Pretty
appreciate
vulnerable.
that, man, to
Yep.
share that. Yeah, you let everybody see inside your heart, and that was really great of you to do that. Thank you very, very much.
I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
you've been listening to and watching the Big East Rewind with Chuck Everson and Sonny Sparrow. The Big East Rewind is produced and directed by Nick Chico Chorus and Daryl Gurney. Check us out on Sirius XM on the Sirius XM app, on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your
Share it with your
friends.
friends.
And we will be with you again next week. Same time, same channel. You take care now. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Phil.